I grew up as the steady, reliable child in my family, the dependable daughter who never caused trouble, while my younger sister Melissa was the golden child who commanded everyone's attention. If I was a reliable sedan, Melissa was the flashy sports car, high maintenance, always breaking rules, yet endlessly doted upon. My parents constantly indulged Melissa's whims and excused her mistakes, while expecting me to understand and step aside. Mom would affectionately call me her steady one, which sounds like praise until you realize it was code for, we don't have to worry about her. She'll be fine no matter what. In our household, fine just meant invisible. From an early age, the pattern was set. I would work hard for something, a good grade, a new outfit, an achievement, and Melissa would find a way to steal the spotlight. I vividly remember saving for months from a part-time bookstore job to buy a gorgeous vintage dress for my high school homecoming. I was so excited to wear it. But one afternoon, I came home to find it missing from my closet. Melissa had borrowed it for a last-minute party. Not only did she take it without asking, she later bragged to her friends that it was a gift from her boyfriend, the very same boy who had been chatting flirtatiously with me at school until Melissa swept in with her effortless charm. When I complained, Mom gently scolded me to be more understanding. Your sister needed it more than you did, honey. You can always get another dress. Incidents like that became the norm. When I made the honor roll at school, Melissa would conveniently have some personal crisis that demanded all of Mom and Dad's attention. If I achieved something noteworthy, Melissa would one-up it or divert focus with her own drama. I got into a prestigious college on scholarship. She dropped out of 2 different universities, each time causing a family meltdown that overshadowed my news. I was the one quietly holding things together, while she was the center of family gravity, pulling everyone into her orbit of constant chaos. Being the steady one also meant that my parents took me for granted. They assumed I didn't mind giving up my needs for Melissa's sake. I was expected to be mature, accommodating, and self-sufficient, the supporting character in the family, while Melissa starred in every scene. And for a long time, I accepted that role. I craved my parents' approval and figured if I just stayed good and patient, eventually they'd see my worth. It took me years and unimaginable betrayal before I learned how wrong I was. Despite the family dynamic, I worked hard to build an independent life. I graduated college with honors and landed a solid job at a marketing firm. While I was spending late nights at the office and diligently climbing the corporate ladder, Melissa was bouncing between failed ventures, a short-lived modeling gig here, a half-baked business idea there, always funded by my father's wallet and cushioned by my mother's doting support. I often heard updates through Mom about Melissa finding herself. Meanwhile, I actually found myself in a professional sense. I became a skilled marketing consultant, financially independent, and proud of my stability. In my mid-20s, at a conference in Chicago, I met David, the man who would become my husband. David was smart, charismatic, and actually listened to me in a way no one in my family ever had. When we first chatted after his presentation on digital marketing trends, he treated me as an equal. To him, I wasn't the other daughter, or Melissa's sister. I was me with my own ideas and value. After 2 years of dating, David proposed. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was the star of my own story. Planning our wedding, however, brought my family's old habits roaring back. Melissa had just blown up another relationship and was going through what Mom delicately called a rough patch. The moment our wedding plans started, so did the complaints. The date we chose was too triggering because it was near the anniversary of Melissa's breakup. The venue I fell in love with? Turns out, Melissa had once gone on a date there, so it was suddenly insensitive to book it. Even the bridesmaid dress color I picked caused drama. Melissa claimed the shade reminded her of something painful, so could I please change it for her sake? It was absurd. My mother actually asked me, "Can't you just be more considerate? She's really struggling right now." I was astonished. Was my wedding supposed to revolve around my sister's fragile feelings? For once, I put my foot down. No, I wasn't going to redesign my big day to accommodate Melissa's latest melodrama. I firmly, but respectfully, stuck to the plans David and I wanted. In the end, our wedding was beautiful. Melissa pouted on the sidelines and Mom fretted that my assertiveness upset her, but I didn't care. For once, I refused to shrink. Myself for my sister. Marrying David felt like a turning point, a break from the past. After the ceremony, I remember looking around at my happy friends and in-laws, dancing and laughing and thinking, maybe I'm finally free. In the 3 years that followed, David and I built a lovely life together. We bought a cozy house, a safe distance from my parents' place, and I started my own consulting business with his enthusiastic support. I maintained healthy boundaries with my family. I'd show up for holidays and birthdays, I'd answer weekly phone calls to say hello, but I stayed out of the constant emergency interventions that Melissa's life still seemed to require. According to the updates I got from Mom, Melissa was surprisingly doing okay for a while. She moved in with a new boyfriend, Marcus, got a job as a waitress at a fancy restaurant, even started a yoga teacher training program. Maybe she's finally growing up, I thought. It was a hopeful thought, but I should have known better. One ordinary Thursday afternoon, while I was in a client meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message made my stomach drop. Check your husband's phone, the Park Hotel, room 412. Every Tuesday for 6 months. There was no other information, just that. I felt icy shock run through me. Was this a prank? Spam? A scorned ex of David's trying to mess with us? Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a cruel joke. But a deeper instinct, a gut feeling I couldn't ignore, told me I needed to find out the truth. That night, with hands trembling, I did something I never imagined. I checked David's phone while he was in the shower. My heart pounded as I opened his messages. What I found shattered my world. There, in hidden texts, were months and months of flirtatious messages, secret meetups, and even photos that made me sick to my core. Every Tuesday, when David was supposedly at a client lunch with Peterson Industries, a new account he'd talked about endlessly, he was actually at the Park Hotel, room 412, and the person he was secretly texting? Saved under M. Melissa. My sister Melissa. I stared at the phone screen, sitting on the cold bathroom floor, the shower, still running in the background, utterly numb. It felt like an out-of-body experience, like I was watching some nightmare soap opera play out, and it couldn't possibly be my life. But it was. My husband and my own sister, carrying on an affair under my nose for 8 months. They started with coordinating a surprise for my birthday, how ironic, which morphed into inside jokes, then coffee meetups, and then hotel romps every week. The betrayal was beyond anything I could have imagined. I confronted David that very night. As I stood there shaking, holding his phone with all their dirty secrets laid bare, he just hung his head and muttered, "I never meant for this to happen," as if it were an accident, a thing that just happened to him rather than choices. He made every single week for most of our marriage. Through clenched teeth, I asked the only question that mattered. How long? When he whispered 8 months, a wave of disgust and heartbreak hit me so hard, I thought I might literally vomit. The next confrontation was with Melissa. It was predictably dramatic. She sobbed and begged for forgiveness, blathering on about how one thing just led to another and how they never meant to hurt me. A little late for that, don't you think? Then she actually had the gall to invoke sisterhood. She pleaded, "We're sisters, we're family. That bond means we can get past anything, right?" I think what broke me most wasn't the affair itself, horrific as it was, but my parents' reaction when it all came out. My mother and father, upon learning that their younger daughter was pregnant, oh yes, pregnant, with their older daughter's husband's child, went straight into damage control mode. For Melissa. "These things happen," my dad said quietly, as if someone tripping on a sidewalk. "What's important now is keeping the family together." Mom was even worse. She rushed to comfort Melissa. "She's scared and alone." Mom admonished me, "We all need to support her, especially with a baby on the way." I stood there, bruised and betrayed, and it dawned on me that once again my feelings were invisible. My husband's betrayal, my sister's treachery, the wreckage of my life. None of that got as much attention as Melissa's needs. I was expected to suck it up and be understanding, because family handles things together. In that moment, Something inside me snapped. I realized I had a choice. Either accept being invisible forever or finally put myself first. Enough. Enough. Within a week, I filed for divorce. I didn't want a penny from David beyond what the law entitled. I wanted out clean and fast. He didn't fight it. Honestly, he looked more relieved than anything when I told him it was over. I moved out of our house. We sold it and split the proceeds, and got myself a small but stylish loft apartment in the city. It had big windows overlooking a skyline that promised anonymity and new beginnings. I remember the day I signed the lease and moved in. I sat on the floor of my new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. The silence was peaceful. No drama, no walking on eggshells. Just me, alone, feeling the pain, but also a strange sense of liberation. I threw myself into my work like never before. All the hurt and anger I channeled into growing my consulting business. Late nights, early mornings, pounding cups of coffee and forging new client connections. Anything to keep from wallowing in heartbreak. And you know what? Success came. Within 6 months, I had more clients than I could handle. Within a year, I hired 2 employees to help with the workload. Work became my therapy, and it turned out I was damn good at it. My name started getting around in the industry. I was even invited to speak at a couple of professional conferences, which was surreal given where I'd been just a short time before. I also found an actual therapist, Dr. Martinez, who helped me unpack years of family dysfunction. In our sessions, I confronted how I'd been conditioned to always yield, always please, always make myself smaller. "You've spent your life being a supporting character in everyone else's story," she told me once, "but you are allowed to be the main character of your own life." It was a revelation that fueled my determination to never go back to the way things were. Meanwhile, the fairy tale romance between David and Melissa disintegrated faster than I expected. Their relationship, built on lies and betrayal, faltered under the weight of reality. Who could have predicted that, right? After Melissa's baby, a little girl named Sophie, was born, I heard through the grapevine that David started pulling away. The stress of a newborn, the guilt, and probably his own innate cowardice made him disappear on her. First, he skipped a few child support payments, then he missed Sophie's first pediatric checkup. Then one day, he just left town. Moved to another state to start fresh, leaving Melissa a single mom. So much for true love. Did I feel vindicated? I'd love to say yes, serve them right. But honestly, I mostly felt sad. What a waste of time and emotions on people who never deserved either. I wouldn't wish single motherhood on anyone, even Melissa, and certainly not on an innocent baby. Still, actions have consequences, and they were reaping theirs. By then, I was far too busy thriving to pay them much attention anyway. My business was booming. I expanded into new markets, opened a second office on the West Coast, and found myself being quoted as an industry expert in marketing. I even cautiously started dating again. I learned from my past and set firm boundaries in any new relationship. I was determined never to lose myself in someone else's shadow again. Life was almost good. About 3 years after my divorce, karma finally caught up with my sister in a dramatic fashion, and this time, my parents couldn't ignore reality. I got an urgent call from my father one evening asking me to come to my parents' house. "We need to talk," he said, his voice uncharacteristically grim. When I arrived, I found them sitting in the living room looking exhausted and aged, with a mountain of papers on the coffee table. Bank statements, legal documents, even a police report. My heart flipped, thinking someone might be sick or in legal trouble. I braced myself. The story unfolded in pieces. Melissa had been stealing from my parents. Their once beloved golden child had quietly siphoned tens of thousands of dollars from them over the past year. She had forged checks, taken out a loan against their house by faking Dad's signature, run up credit cards in their name, even pawned my mother's jewelry and heirlooms that belonged to our grandmother. It was staggering. My parents had only discovered the full extent because a bank investigator alerted them to irregularities. Melissa was literally jeopardizing their retirement and home. We didn't want to believe it, Dad whispered, tears in his eyes. She's our daughter, but the evidence... He gestured helplessly at the pile of documents detailing Melissa's cons and frauds. My mother was quietly sobbing, repeating, "How could she do this to us?" Over and over. They had already confronted Melissa, who of course denied it until they showed her the proof. Then she turned angry and defensive, blaming them for cutting her off, since apparently at some point they had reduced handing her money. It got ugly. In the end, my parents had done something I never imagined. They cut her off completely. They changed the locks on their house, closed joint accounts, and made it clear to Melissa that until she got serious help, she was not welcome in their home. They were heartbroken, but also furious and feeling betrayed by the very child they had so blindly defended. And then came something I had imagined in my most wishful daydreams but never truly expected: an apology. Both Mom and Dad, through tears, told me how terribly sorry they were for failing me as parents. They acknowledged the unfair favoritism, the way they had minimized my accomplishments and pain for years while enabling Melissa's behavior. "We were wrong," my father said, voice cracking. "We failed you. We see that now." My mother concurred, saying they realized how badly they had hurt me by always expecting me to step aside. It was the most sincere, specific apology I'd ever heard from them. I sat there stunned and silent, letting their words wash over wounds I'd carried all my life. But they weren't done. There was also the matter of their estate, those papers on the table. "We've updated our will," Mom said gently. Because of what happened, and because, as they now knew, I was the responsible daughter, they decided that I would inherit everything. Everything that was left of their assets, which, to my shock, was a very substantial amount. My parents aren't ostentatiously wealthy. Dad ran a successful accounting firm, and Mom invested wisely, but they live modestly. I never realized just how much they'd saved. As Dad spoke, I glanced at one of the financial statements. Their net worth was in the 8 figures. My jaw literally dropped. "It's not about the money," Dad added quickly. "It's about knowing it will go to someone who will use it well, someone who built her life instead of tearing others down." They were effectively disinheriting Melissa. Not to punish her, they insisted, but to protect their legacy and, in their words, reward the daughter who has proven herself trustworthy. I was named sole executor and beneficiary of their estate. It was all laid out, signed, and notarized. I drove home that night in a daze, processing everything. My parents had finally seen the truth, and it only took Melissa nearly ruining them financially to get there. It felt both sad and vindicating. I wouldn't wish what they went through on anyone, but at the same time, their awakening was something I had quietly yearned for all my life. Of course, in a family like ours, no big shift stays quiet for long. It didn't take long for Melissa to find out she'd been cut off and cut out, and she did not take it well. The barrage began. Furious voicemails, raging texts, then whimpering apologies, then swinging back to threats. She tried every tactic. Guilt. "How can you do this to your own sister? Do I mean nothing to you?" Blame. "You turned Mom and Dad against me. This is your fault, you stuck-up Appeals to sympathy. "I'm a single mother. Your own niece needs stability. How can you take her inheritance?" Apparently now it was my fault her child had instability. Promises and crocodile tears. "I swear I'll change. I'll go to therapy, I'll do anything. Please, I need help." I said nothing. I had learned, finally, that engaging with her drama only feeds it. I let her messages go unanswered. My parents, simultaneously getting bombarded, did the same. Though it was harder for them, Mom especially felt torn about her grandchildren's welfare. We did discreetly contact a lawyer to ensure Sophie, and the new baby on the way, would have something like a trust in the future, but we did not tell Melissa that. Things escalated when Melissa showed up at my office building, heavily pregnant. With her second child. Yes, she somehow reconnected with David briefly, disastrously, resulting in baby number 2 on the way. She caused a scene in the lobby, screaming that she needed to talk to me, that I owed her. Security had to escort her out. A local gossip blog even picked up the incident, painting it as "Local heiress freezes out destitute sister," with Melissa tearfully claiming I had stolen her inheritance and abandoned her in her time of need. She posed for pictures dramatically holding her toddler and her pregnant belly for maximum effect. It was outrageous. Again, I gave no public response. Let people think I'm the evil sister if they want. Anyone who knew the real story was on my side, and strangers' opinions meant nothing to me anymore. Then, one late Tuesday night, it happened. The final confrontation I both dreaded and anticipated. I was unwinding at home with a glass of wine when my intercom buzzed. Down on the street, in the drizzling rain, was Melissa. Pale, disheveled, eyes red from crying, and visibly 8 months pregnant. Against my better judgment, I felt a pang of pity looking at her through the window. This was a far cry from the glamorous, self-assured sister I'd grown up with. She looked desperate and broken. I cracked open the front door but stood blocking the entrance. "Please," she whispered, voice shaking. "I have nowhere else to go." She explained, haltingly between sobs, that she had truly hit rock bottom. She'd been living out of her car after getting evicted from her apartment. She had lost her waitressing job. David was gone for good. My parents wouldn't take her calls. They actually threatened to call the police on her if she trespassed after the last stunt. She literally had no one willing to help. Then she looked at me, tears in her eyes, and said, "After everything, you're still my sister. I'm your sister. I need you." For a long moment, I just stood there, memories flashing through my mind. The years of manipulation, the stolen dress, the sidelined accomplishments, the haughty smirks as she charmed. Her way, the ultimate betrayal with my husband. The hurt resurfaced, but something else did too. A sense of how far I had come and how much I had survived. There was a time I would have consoled her automatically, invited her in, even apologized to her, somehow, for the situation just to keep peace. Not anymore. "I'm sorry you're suffering," I said quietly, and I meant it. "But your life is not my responsibility." Her eyes widened, as if she truly hadn't expected me to remain firm. She started talking faster, more frantically. "What about Sophie? What about this baby? They're your blood. Don't you care that they're innocent in all this?" I took a deep breath. "They are innocent," I answered. "Which is why you need to step up for them, Melissa. There are organizations that can help. Shelters, charities, social services. If you truly want help, I can give you resources, phone numbers of people who are trained for this." "I don't want a damn phone number," she suddenly shrieked, anger flashing in her eyes. "I want family. I want what you got from Mom and Dad. It's not fair. You have everything now and I have nothing." There it was, the entitlement, the resentment, raw and exposed. In her mind, I was the villain who took what was supposed to be hers. Unbelievable. I felt a calm I didn't expect wash over me. "What I got," I replied steadily, "was decades of being cast aside and taken for granted. What I built for myself came after I finally realized I deserved better." She started to retort, spitting out something about me being heartless and selfish, even flung an insult that's why David cheated, because you're a cold ba. Winced internally, but I didn't let it show. I'd been stabbed by far sharper words from her before. I simply closed the door, gently, firmly, and locked it. On the other side, I heard her dissolve into furious, hysterical screams and pounding on the door for a minute or two. I stood there, forehead against the cool wood, heart pounding but resolute. Eventually, her noise stopped. I peeked through the window as she slumped away in the rain, back toward the street. It was a pathetic, heartbreaking sight. And yet, I felt no urge to run after her. I truly hoped she would get help, turn her life around for the sake of her children. But I knew I couldn't be part of that journey. Not anymore. I sank onto my couch, shaking, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 37 years. It was over. I was free. That was 6 months ago. Since that night, my relationship with my parents has healed slowly but surely. We have honest conversations now, and they respect my boundaries in ways they never did before. My business has continued to grow, and I decided to use a portion of my eventual inheritance to start a charitable foundation for women entrepreneurs, turning something painful into something positive. I even met someone new, a kind-hearted architect who values me and treats me with respect. Life isn't a fairy tale, but it's good in a quiet, solid way. As for Melissa, I hear she's living in another state now, trying to make a fresh start on her own. I truly wish her and her children well. I hope she finds peace and learns from her mistakes, but I won't be there to witness it. She crossed a line that forever changed how I view family. Forgiveness may come someday, but reconciliation is not on the table. In the end, I learned that sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. My sister and ex-husband expected me to crumble, but I chose to rise. I built a life so full and fulfilling that their opinions and their betrayals no longer define me. In doing so, I proved Frank Sinatra right. The best revenge is indeed massive, and I didn't need to destroy anyone in the process. I simply stopped letting them destroy me. Finally, I am the main character of my own story, and it's a story of survival, self-worth, and triumph that I hope inspires others to never accept less than they deserve. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is just living a life that on your own terms, full of happiness and hard-won peace.